Former White House doctor Kevin O'Connor leaving his deposition without answering a single question on what he knew about President Biden's mental decline and physical decline.
Were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Did you ever believe the president was unfit to execute his duties as president?
I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Texas Congressman and House Oversight Committee member Brandon Gill joins us now. Congressman, good morning to you. So does the doctor pleading the Fifth add to concerns that there was a cover-up?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on. It absolutely does. You know, we've known for a long time that what we were being told about Joe Biden's health, his mental state, was not reality. We saw it in the debate. The American people could see him declining before their very eyes. And all this does is we're trying to ask people involved in this cover-up about what they knew and when. All this does whenever they refuse to answer questions is raise more questions. And that's what we're trying to figure out here.
Congressman, what happens next? Will Congress ever be able to get the truth out of this doctor, or is there enough evidence from other witnesses who have testified before Congress already to establish what I would call the legal basis for a charge of a cover-up?
Well, we're only getting started here. We've got a variety of other aides who worked in the Biden White House and who were near in his orbit during that time that we're going to be bringing in for questioning. So we're just getting started here. But the more these people refuse to work with the committee and to answer questions in a straightforward way, the more questions that get raised to begin with. You know, coming in and being asked, were you told to lie about the president's health, and claiming the Fifth just raises more questions. So that's what we're going after. We're just getting started. We've got more people we're going to be talking to.
Well, Congresswoman, your colleague Jasmine Crockett, she was at the deposition yesterday, and she has no problem with this doctor not answering any of the questions. Listen to this.
It's kind of astounding to hear someone say, if you invoke the Fifth Amendment, that is only because you are guilty. We have a constitutional right that anyone who may be under fire can invoke. I think that he did what any good lawyer would advise him to do. The country is off the rails right now. People have concerns about the current occupant in the White House and whether or not he is mentally fit to serve in this moment.
What do you think about that?
Well, the doctor absolutely has a constitutional prerogative to plead the Fifth. What we're saying, though, is whenever we are asking you straightforward questions about whether you were directed to lie about the president's health, that's something that I would expect you to be able to answer without resorting to the Fifth Amendment. But listen, Jasmine Crockett can say what she wants to say. She can slander the president now, but I don't think that anybody with who is sane is comparing President Trump's health to Biden's health. I think that's nuts.
Meantime, Unearthed College newspaper writings show that rising Democrat star and socialist Zohran Mamdani was promoting an anti-Israel boycott. So why haven't more of your Democrat colleagues, especially those of the Jewish faith, been more forceful in coming out against Mamdani, especially when new concerning things about this guy come to light each and every day?
Yeah, you know, it's like the more we learn about this guy, the more radical we can see that he is. You know, this is a guy who is running on a platform of defund the police, globalize the intifada. He is explicitly a communist who wants to nationalize grocery stores, doesn't believe that billionaires should exist. And wants to seize the means of production. I mean, this guy is as radical gets. And now we're learning that he had a variety of articles from his college days talking about white privilege, demeaning white people, which, by the way, is the one form of racism that the left actually embraces, and has been promoting these explicitly anti-Semitic BDS movement. So I think this is, it's par for the course. We see this guy, we know who he is, and I'd like to see more of my Democrat colleagues coming out and opposing this. I mean, this is radical left-wing stuff. And honestly, this type of anti-Semitism, this kind of racism should have no place in our country.
Yeah, well, they may do just that, but for political reasons, because now we're learning that some of Mamdani's allies are threatening to primary Hakeem Jeffries because he isn't left enough for them. So there could end up being no love lost between these two politicians. Only time will tell.
It's a party in disarray.
Congressman Gill, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
White House physician to Presidents Trump and Obama. He also served in the White House medical unit under President Bush, so he understands the role of White House physician probably better than anybody else around. Congressman Jackson, thank you very much for joining us today. So what goes through your mind with your experience as you watch him refuse to answer those questions?
Well, Martha, I think he's in a bad spot. I mean, I think he can't say anything without compromising himself and revealing the truth that there was a cover-up and that he was potentially most likely involved in that cover-up, along with many other members that were working day-to-day in and around the White House and the West Wing. He tried initially to go with presidential privilege and say he had presidential privilege, and President Trump waived that, opening up his opportunity to testify there. Then he went to the doctor-patient privilege. That was forwarded to the committee. The committee looked at that, and they agreed with HIPAA and with the AMA that you can be legally compelled to discuss conversations between the doctor and the patient. The doctor can under the right legal circumstances, and certainly a congressional subpoena fits that bill. So he was kind of left with nothing but the Fifth Amendment, pleading the Fifth, and that's what he did. He pleaded the Fifth, and I think it was an effort to keep from implicating himself in what we. And I think it actually to me, it looks like, this actually happened, that there was a cover-up. This kind of validates that, and it almost certainly indicates that Dr. O'Connor was actively involved in it. So it's a bad situation. I think the American people deserve answers at this point. And, we've talked about this before. I've talked about this on Fox a lot lately. This is not about looking back and going back and digging into the past. This is about what happened. Did we have people in the White House that were unelected officials that were acting as the president?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And there's a lot of questions about this auto pen. His staff has said that that he approved any time that the auto pen was used. We know many presidents use the auto pen, but it just raises a lot of questions. Congressman Jackson, we've got some breaking news, so I'm going to have to leave it there. But thank you very much. Great to have you with us, as always.
Well, he's prescribing the Fifth. Former Biden physician Kevin O'Connor dodging every question, but his name, he invoked the constitutional right 14 times in 20 minutes to a Congressional Oversight Committee. They grilled him about Biden's health and fitness for office.
I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
And paging Dr. Spin, Jasmine Crockett defending the former president and turning the tables.
Do you have concerns about the president's health and his mental acuity at all? None whatsoever?
I had none. Now, granted, I didn't see Joe Biden every single day, but I did have an opportunity to interact with the president. I never had a concern. If there's anyone that I am concerned about their mental acuity, it is the current occupant.
All right, Emily, the Fifth is a right that's in the Constitution. And one of the things that happened that Biden did not provide the Trump appointees executive privilege after January 6th in those investigations. So the Democrats, once again, they broke a norm, and now they've had turnabout. Is it fair play?
It is. And look, he came in there saying it's alarming and it's unprecedented that I'm being called in here. And he tried to invoke the patient-client immunity. And then the president's like, don't worry about that. We got you. So then all of a sudden he's invoking his constitutionally protected Fifth Amendment right. And the reality is that I think legally and to attorneys, they're like, oh, yes, we totally understand and it's strategic. But the public perception is always that you're hiding something. And everyone sort of said at the time, none of these questions in any way are about that. So it just makes you look guilty. I feel like Jasmine Crockett's point, which you went on to talk about, was that he could have his medical license withdrawn or, taken away if he actually does answer any of this stuff. I mean, it's on the chopping block for a lot worse reasons. And the questions actually should have been about, did you take the PSA levels? Why not? It's in his bones now. It's on you. So at the end of the day, I think him doing it for everything is what made him look so bad in the public eye, because he wasn't actually listening to the questions. I think it would have been pretty easy to say, no one told me to lie about the president's health, and then we at least would have been satiated in that moment.
And also, you can't, I would imagine, Jesse, you can't be prosecuted for your observations about somebody.
This isn't a criminal investigation into this doctor. It's an investigation into the use of the auto pen. So when he says, oh, doctor-patient relationship, well, he was asked, did anybody ever tell you to falsify medical records? And he pled the fifth. That doesn't have anything to do with the doctor-patient relationship. And usually people don't plead the fifth when there's no criminal liability. He's not facing criminal liability here. I understand doctor-patient relationship. I would protect it if someone was to ask Dr. Siegel about my medical history. I would do everything possible to murder Dr. Siegel. And then I would burn the records. We had Comer talking about burning records on last night, and he said that he's been trying to subpoena some of these medical records, or many records about Joe Biden, and they don't exist. And he suggested that all of these documents disappeared. Like maybe the Biden people may have taken them when they left in January because the Trump people can't find them.
I guess the other thing, Harold, is the question of basically if the White House doctor every year after the physical says, he's fit, he can do the job, no problem. That's like basically that's the job. Is that the concern? Is that if it turns out not to be true, he would be in trouble?
So I have a very different opinion, you guys. I think this is a complete waste of time by this committee. I think when you're getting into the physician-patient privilege, it's pathetic and tragically partisan. The American people decided last year, after hearing questions raised by many around this table, rightly so, about President Biden's cognitive abilities and his ability to do the job. Guess what we decided to do? We decided not to elect him, and we rejected his vice president as well. There was a lot that went on during that process, and then when the country saw President Biden in that debate with President Trump, it became painfully clear that he was not fit to run for president the next time. To ask a doctor to come and violate a physician-patient privilege, you open the door for a whole range of things. Not only Dr. Siegel, but whom else did this doctor see in the White House? What other presidents? What other staffers? Are their records now fair game because James Comer and a group of partisans in the Congress want to see this? We have elections to resolve these things. Now, if indeed you believe the auto pen was used in a way that was illegal, then call in the president and call in the others. Don't call in this doctor.
Well, they're calling in many people. This is just one of many
talking,
people who are going to be called in. And if everybody takes the fifth, Harold, you think that looks good?
It's their right, and it probably doesn't.
Sure,
but
it's their right, but it looks terrible.
Right, but to call the doctor, and you made my point. You made it, in, I think, in a funny and a serious way. Why call the doctor? And the doctor, I'll remind you, President Trump's doctor in the first term sent out letters saying that the president was in great health. He probably is, and I hope and pray that he is. What Congress should do is pass a law demanding that the president of the United States take a cognitive test every year and that it be released to Congress and to the public, and that the doctor come before. They had to carve that out. But to call this doctor in is just petty, silly, and it's just so partisan.
Well, if the doctor knew this guy wasn't up to it, and then someone else had the auto pen, and they were signing stuff that now is law of the land, then that law of the land is now bunk. So that's gone, Harold, and that's what this is about.
What if we call back doctors who saw President Reagan, and doctors who saw President H.W. Bush, and
that's
doctors
the 80s. This is last year, Harold.
Right, but what if there were auto pens that made? But Jesse, I just think you're opening a door here that I don't think you want to.
Well, I'm going to open a door, and then maybe I'll kick it down.
The doctor is not in. The doctor is out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't trust any doctor with hair like that. Let's be honest. I mean, that's the elephant in the room. It looks like what is that? Alfalfa from Little Rascals. I don't know what it is. It's very frightening. There's something clearly wrong with him. I get the doctor-patient relationship. I'm with Jesse. If Dr. Siegel ever talked about what went on over in his changing room, I'd be in big trouble. But We also have a right to know the truth. The leader of our free country, who was in charge of the nuclear football, had a brain as broken as Jerry Nadler's lawn chair. We were lied to. The story is bigger. The doctor is but one variable here. This is a bigger story than him. He was chosen for his obedience. That's obvious. But I want to know about the people who ran the cover-up. Mm-hmm. And even more than that, because I accept the cover-up from Democrats. That's what they do. The journalists that covered this up. That's who I care about. But they can't investigate themselves. Why be your own hangman? We need an independent body to investigate the journalistic industry or what's left of it, because I want to know. I want everybody. I want them frog marched into the sea, Harold. Frog marched into the sea.
Who should they call when they do an investigation on the Epstein files? Who's the first witness?
I don't know.
Bill Clinton.
Dead.
Yes.
Bill Clinton. How many times is he on the jet, Harold? Because he lied about that.
Evidently, there was no blacklist. That's what I heard. That's what Mr.
Blacklist, Harold, I don't want to make this racial, okay?
Or whatever, the list.
I'm going to let them continue in the break. Up next, you can now blame Kamala's gut for Tim Walz.
First, let's get to our senior national correspondent, Aisha Hasty. She's live on the Hill for us. So, Aisha, what did the committee think of Kevin O'Connor's testimony?
Well, there's not a whole lot to take away from what happened because he didn't say anything. By invoking the fifth, Sandra, he didn't hurt or help President Biden, but now he's got everyone else talking about him and wondering what was he trying to hide. So the House Oversight Committee actually released a 20-minute video of that deposition just to show to everybody what they were dealing with as Dr. O'Connor pleaded the fifth to literally every single question except his name. Watch this.
Were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer.
Did you ever believe the president was unfit to execute his duties as president?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer.
Is it your intention to decline to answer all questions put to you today by the committee?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer.
Sandra, he does that over and over again until the committee finally gives in and gives up. He also stonewalled our chat program going in and out of the deposition room, didn't say a word. Republicans say this is only adding fuel to the fire, that Biden's inner circle is hiding something. But Democrats say, look, pleading the fifth does not imply guilt. So what now? What's next? Well, the committee will continue on with its investigation. And next up is Ashley Williams, former special assistant to the president. She is set to be questioned on Friday, and we will see what she does with the committee. Sandra?
We'll be watching for that. Aisha Hasty on the Hill for us. Thank you very much. John?
President Biden's former doctor Kevin O'Connor appeared on Capitol Hill yesterday for a highly anticipated House deposition on the possible cover-up of Joe Biden's declining health. But even though he was Biden's doctor for all 4 years of his presidency, the interview lasted less than 1 hour. O'Connor refused to talk. He pled the fifth over a dozen times.
Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter. I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. On my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. On my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. On my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. On my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Our senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram chased the doctor down after his deposition and got similar results.
Dr. O'Connor, did you take the fifth at all points? Did you take the fifth because you're trying to cover up what the president's state was? Is he healthy now? Was he healthy when you...
Well, I guess we're just on repeat today.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I did not know that Dwight Schrute was President Biden's physician for all 4 years.
Oh my God.
So exciting. Was Michael Scott his chief of staff, and we're just finding out now? Yeah, I mean, this is wholly unsurprising because he has something to hide. It's very obvious. But the question is, is this a congressional issue? Do you keep trying to put the screws to the guy because he's not going to answer a thing? Or, I ask you, does this rise to the level of criminality? Should there be a criminal investigation of this doctor and what happened?
Well, that would be separate from him pleading this. And that sort of, I think, begs that bigger question of, is there a difference between an inference and then the legal protection? So, Lisa, to that point, the only Democrat in the room, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, said, oh, come on, it's ridiculous that someone pleading the Fifth should rise to the level of an assumption of covering up criminal behavior, right? And that's an admonition by judges in court. They specifically say, just because someone pleads the Fifth, you cannot infer that. But at the end of the day, why aren't you saying anything if you don't have someone to hide? The argument goes. So here, the good doctor, why couldn't you even answer the question, did someone tell you to lie? Wouldn't you take the opportunity to even say in that deposition, let me set the record straight, no one told me to lie, and plead the Fifth otherwise?
Well, because he doesn't want to put Biden in a bad light, and he also doesn't want to perjure himself. Also, I would like to test Jasmine Crockett's mental acuity, so just her mental fitness. But beyond that, so the two key questions that the Oversight Committee were trying to get to and ask him, were you ever told to lie about the president's health, and did you ever believe President Biden was unfit to execute his duties? Pretty simple questions that he refused to answer. Also, what's interesting is if you go back to 2019, Dr. Kevin O'Connor had told the public that Biden was being treated for an enlarged prostate. But he specifically said it wasn't prostate cancer. So was he lying to us then as well in 2019? Because you even have Democrats like Drs. Ezekiel Emanuel after the prostate cancer diagnosis who went on MSNBC telling us that Biden probably had cancer dating back to the start of his presidency in 2021. So I have questions about that. But I think we can all pretty much conclude that, he's lying to us.
Right. And it also, not to add in another layer, but all of the ethical malpractice questions, either you didn't test for prostate cancer or you did and then you lied to the patient, right? There's a whole host. The whole point is of a million questions that this good doctor needs to answer for, and pleading the Fifth in this particular proceedings, not going to cut it.
It's hard, Emily, between what you just said, Lisa, and what you're pointing out. It's hard to get around these questions.
Yeah.
Are you deficient as a physician? Did you fail the former president? Did you fail in the areas of testing, treatment? I mean, it's hard not to ask those questions when he pleads the Fifth to something like this. And when we know the history of how long that enlarged prostate dates back to and what he had to say about it. And how did he know it wasn't cancer? Can we get that answer now?
Right.
Yep.
How did you make sure that it wasn't cancer back then? Look, Neera Tanden, one of the aides who's already testified in like the auto pin part of the investigation, received one of these letters. And I want to point this out because this is what the House Oversight Committee said with her. In light of unique and extraordinary nature of these matters under investigation, President Trump has determined that an assertion of executive privilege is not in the national interest and therefore is not justified with respect to particular subjects within the purview of the House Oversight Committee. That same waiving of immunity was given to Dr. Kevin O'Connor. So my question is, when he says he can plead the Fifth and patient-doctor privilege, oh yes, all that is true to a certain degree, but the White House has waived your immunity and cleared you to be able to talk. Why won't he answer questions?
That's right, because Jeremy, so initially his attorney said, well, this is alarming and unprecedented, talking about the subpoena to have him come in. He said, it's privileged and this is ridiculous. But the point is that what was alarming and unprecedented was the cover-up of a declining Crypt Keeper president that led to massive destruction of our country's borders and lost lives, at least of 13 service members. So the American people need answers, and it's not up to this kid to say whether or not he's underprivileged beforehand. You go in, you give your answers, and then we'll decide, and then the administration will decide what the repercussions are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the American people are owed answers here. We have a right to know what happened. And his whole demeanor is almost as if, he's just doing, asking for some type of favor of him. Would you share a little bit about what happened? No. You owe us answers. And look, I've been in the congressional hearings, before. A few years ago, we were talking about exposing the issues in the military under the Biden administration. And you take time to prepare. You're going to get some questions from the people, on the other side of the aisle. They're going to be tough questions. You prepare for those questions. He didn't even try. Didn't even try to get out his own points or make any type of argument about what happened. And to your point, ask the very basic question about Were you told to lie? It couldn't even answer that. So I think what it does is adds more fuel to the fire. I do want to make sure that our Congress continues to carry this out. They can't take the foot off the gas now. They have to keep, because the next investigation, the next hearings that come up, we need to make sure that they don't try to do the same thing. This, I plead the fifth and not say anything at all. And is this a precedent for what's to happen? So I hope that we continue to put the feet on the foot on the pedal and make sure that we actually get answers for this.
That's right.
Power panel now. Daniel Cameron, former Attorney General of Kentucky, and Julian Epstein, attorney and former chief counsel for the House Judiciary Committee. Julian, I'm going to start with you. Why not just come forth, say what you know, what you don't know, and move on?
Well, Harris, thanks for having me. As you know, even during the Biden administration, I was on record saying I think the cover-up was one of the worst crimes against democracy, and it should be fully investigated, if for no other reason than to deter future such cover-ups. With respect to the physician, it is true that the physician likely has a physician patient privilege. And so there is a limit as to what kind of questions he can answer, particularly on diagnostic issues. If he was asked to lie, if he was part of an effort to mislead the public, that's just another story. I think the deeper wells for the investigators are going to be with the inner circle, and there's no reason why they shouldn't go hard at the staff that I think clearly participated in an egregious cover-up.
Look, Daniel, when the White House, waives immunity of any kind and says you're free to talk, does that help maybe mitigate some of the concern that Julian just expressed over, patient-doctor privilege?
Well, look, I think the former Biden representatives, certainly, if they wanted to be transparent and allow the American people to fully see what happened, the doctor wouldn't have had any concern talking. But let me take a step back and just say it's kind of comical. I mean, it reminded me of a Dave Chappelle skit where he repeatedly pleaded the fifth. It's that comical. And the fact of the matter is I think most Americans know that the Biden administration, for the most part, you can't hide their lying eyes. And I think people need to see behind the veil, if you will, and fully understand what happened during the Biden administration.
Well, look, when the chairman Comer says it just makes him want to go deeper. If you can talk, you might want to, but we'll see what happens. Look, this next one is like an unconscious bestie. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is defending Biden's former doctor. Of course she is. And some shock now, Republican Party polling shows Crockett is leading Democrats' hypothetical 2026 field by 35 points to run for incumbent Republican John Cornyn's seat. And there's this, Jim. She said this to social media, blaming the administration for the flooding and making the issue in Texas all about her.
The sad part is, I think that my heart is going to carry a level of weight that will continue to weigh me down as we have to continue to do our best to survive an administration that literally is against us.
Not a single word about the victims, the children who perished. It's all about her. Part of her caption for that video gave a shout out to her hairstylist saying, "My staff said, y'all are commenting about my bob. Thank you for orchestrating this look." Oh, Daniel.
Well, I think the interesting or ironic part about that video is that she says, she expresses being weighed down. She's going to weigh down the Democratic Party if she's the Republican or Democratic Senate candidate. I'm sure at the NRSC, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, there was a lot of hooping and hollering, knowing that she was leading in the Democratic field. That'll make for a good race in Texas.
Almost out of time, Julian. You get the last word. Does she represent you?
No, and I think that the Republicans would like her to represent the Democratic Party. She's sort of the new type of shock jock politicians, but she is an angry Democrat. She is a new breed of angry Democrat whose language, whose sound is mostly that of the angry street protester. That I don't think is a good look for the Democrat. It is certainly not about building anything in the future. It is about mostly epithets towards the other party, which is not helpful.
Gentlemen, thank you for the quick discussion. Appreciate your time. Outnumbered is after the break.
I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
And so it went for several minutes in a closed-door interview with former President Biden's House doctor at the White House, Kevin O'Connor. Did not answer almost every question posed to him. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer calling out the complete lack of cooperation after that meeting concluded investigating Biden's cognitive decline.
I can tell you exactly what happened. Dr. O'Connor pleaded the Fifth Amendment. This is unprecedented, and I think that this adds more fuel to the fire that there was a cover-up.
Okay, Jonathan Turley, Fox News contributor. Sir, good morning to you. Thank you for coming on, Professor. Legally, he can hide behind the Fifth Amendment. Let's talk about the legality of what his answers were first. Go.
Well, you have to keep on repeating that line because you can't get into any answers without undermining your invocation. The question is really what Congress will do about it. They can actually force his testimony by giving him a grant of immunity. Now, the key about the patient privilege is that that is often negated in a case of what's called the crime fraud exception. In fact, even laws like HIPAA have exceptions for subpoenas and criminal investigations. What the Oversight Committee is saying is we're looking into possible crimes here. You know, these are very serious allegations that even legislation was signed without the knowledge and consent of the president. That can be a crime. There's also questions whether perjury might have been committed. So Congress is in a good position here, but it's likely that O'Connor and maybe even President Biden could go to court to try to prevent even his being compelled to testify.
Okay, didn't the White House the other day say we'll give you all the immunity you want? Isn't that basically what their message was?
Yeah, and I expect that Congress would likely do it as well. They're not trying to bag O'Connor. They're trying to get at the truth here. To keep in mind, Bill, that the 25th Amendment was designed to deal with a president who's no longer capable of carrying out the duties of his office. But it's a bit of a paper tiger. It doesn't work unless you've got the cooperation of figures like the vice president and others. The only other protection we have is congressional oversight, is the ability of Congress to look into these matters. This is long overdue. You know, we had President Wilson, who was effectively out of office when his wife and others were carrying out his functions. And he was basically incapable of making any decisions. We really haven't improved much since then.
Wow. Here is, just to go back in the Wayback Machine, not too far back, 2024, here's how a lot of Democrats, when asked about that question, they responded the following way. Watch.
Is President Biden up to the job? Absolutely.
He is as sharp as ever, as I have known him to be in my engagement, in my experience.
He's clearly up to the job. He's doing it every day. He's doing it successfully.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
Okay, that's the way it went then. This is how it went yesterday now, with Chad Pergram asking the question.
Do you have concerns about the president's health and his mental acuity?
No.
None whatsoever?
I had none. Now, granted, I didn't see Joe Biden every single day, but I did have an opportunity to interact with the president. I never had a concern. If there's anyone that I am concerned about their mental acuity, it is the current occupant.
We addressed the legal side of this. What about the public impression that is left from not answering questions? Comer said all you're doing is adding more fuel to the fire. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, the Democrats have their own problems. You know, the Republicans are citing Representative Goldman, who said previously that invoking the Fifth Amendment is only done when you did something wrong. And they're quoting that all over the place. But the Democrats are going to have a hard time convincing the public to listen to them and not their lying eyes. That we all saw that debate. That was not someone who was even aware of some of his answers. And so I don't think this is going to to work for them. And this idea that somehow they can sort of talk this one away is really not going to work. There are serious questions here. It's unlikely criminal charges are going to come out of this just because of the nature of this process. It's possible. But what we do need are answers. The problem under the 25th Amendment in our current system is that there's always people invested in keeping a president, even a president who looks like, Weekend with Bernie. It's in their advantage to keep him in office. And oversight's the only way for us to penetrate that protective cocoon.
Okay, what I'm hearing you saying, though, is that this has a real good chance of coming back. Just a quick answer on that. Did I hear that right?
Yes. That's correct.
Okay. Jonathan Turley, nice to see you, sir. Thank you for your time, Professor, as always.
Thanks, Bill.
You bet. Thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.